It's the Al Travis Show, and we're lucky to have our next guest on. He's Senator Mark Koran. Love having this cat with me. Senator, how are you?
I'm doing very well.
Good. I I think what happened has been happening in the country is very interesting. I think it's taken off here with the Charlie Kirk death. I know you, and because I what we've done here, you're a religious man. Your
I,
thought. Good.
I am. I have my beliefs, and I think so many things can't be explained except for the true pure belief and faith in the system or the guidance it can provide in your life.
I knew you were, and by the way, I would suggest that I am as well. But what I did not know, and God works in some mysterious ways, Charlie Kirk knew who he was. My kids, because they were in the age group he was going for, college, young kids, is probably how he got on my feed somehow, and I start watching his videos. I enjoyed Charlie Kirk very, very much.
Yeah.
I knew him as a religious man because of his videos, but I am awestruck by what has happened since his assassination. Can you tell us what your thoughts were when he was assassinated and after you saw the vigil on Sunday? And even here in Minnesota, it was a stacked house last night here for Charlie Kirk and TP USA. Your thoughts on Charlie Kirk?
Well, I think it was horrible and tragic, but he knew the risks, and his faith took him to the point where he's going to continue to move forward. Right? Nothing was going to dissuade him from that. But I would argue very differently from the perspective of, yes, they targeted the young, the college, and certainly amazingly impactful.
Yeah.
But just on July 4th, bizarre story. My wife, we're driving up to watch some drag racing in Brainerd on the 4th of July, and she
Nice.
got her phone and she looks and she says, "Hey, do you know this Charlie Kirk guy?" I said, "Are you kidding me?" 63 years old, right? Non-political introvert. My wife,
Yeah.
and she said, "It's amazing," and learning so much about, or just learning as you watch some of his, videos on the camp, the kind of the snippets. So she said, "Why don't we listen to that?" I said, turned it on podcast. No, she says, I want these snippets. And so I brought it up and she watched the one of his college campus tours, the whole event. He's touched so many people. And I think that's why you see the vile hatred towards him, because he was so impactful. 31 years.
Yeah. In 31 years, what he did was amazing. Again,
Yeah.
I was rather stunned. Again, I watched all his, I presume I've seen all of them. At some point, you just keep watching him. But I was stunned that 3,000 human beings in Utah, showed up for it. I didn't know it was that, you saw the videos and somebody comes up and talks. And when he first started, 5 people might show up.
Yeah.
So I knew it was growing, but that was amazing to me. And the number that showed up here in Minnesota. But let me ask you this, sir. At some point, can the left and right not agree on anything? What I mean to that is, you may not agreed with Charlie Kirk on things that he said. You might disagree. I get it. But the guy just wanted to debate. All the videos I've ever watched, I've never seen him raise his voice, none of this. You see AOC, Elon Omar, they come out and they say this stuff about this guy, that he was this hate-filled Nazi war. I never saw it. I've seen it. How can two humans see the same thing and have complete opposite ideas, or are they just using it for clickbait?
Because one's choosing to see all of it, and the other one's choosing and continually fed just a snippet, right? It's what's withheld. And in this case is a perfect example. What's willfully withheld is always more dangerous than the lies they tell you, because it's the context, right? Charlie Kirk's a racist because he questioned if he sees a black pilot in an airline. Well, that's all they know. And that entire dialogue was about DEI and airlines that said we must have 50% representation of minority population and pilots in the next 5 years. There aren't that don't have the desire, and if they do, it automatically leads to the lowering of standards, creates standards. And he said it. His intellect is extraordinary. And he got fiery, right? But he always led back to his faith, which drove his belief system and its relevance to our system of governance as well, right? And who we are as a people, who you are as a family member or as a father. But it's the religion. His religion is what and faith drove his belief system, but he could articulate it, which was amazing.
Yeah.
Every point he could articulate from a religious perspective or from just being a constitutional position or articulating the proper or the truth, right?
Yeah.
The truth. And so when you look at where the greatest disagreements are those things that are unnatural and out of place and incomprehensible to most. Transgender ideology, mutilating children, all of those things, when men and women's sports. He was one of the most compassionate people to somebody who had gender dysphoria, who was out there to challenge him. At the end of the day, is like, I share my beliefs and live my life as I choose. I hope you have the ability to do that as well. But he would try to leave with information. And you could, it was amazing on the details, whether it be religion or a system of governance in the relative history of this country and the world, in how politics and human nature has formed it and shaped it to where we are today. I'm amazed. I mean, because on those colleges' campuses, there may be many who disagree, very bright intellectually. I would argue many are socially and emotionally immature, more immature today than ever. But to have him walk through, right, the First Testament, right, the Second, it's like the Old Testament, the New Testament, holy buckets.
Yeah, he knew his stuff.
Oh, and to articulate it.
Let me ask you this, though. Is this a blip in the radar? I know they're using this as the Turning Point USA, which is very clever with their name. I get it. But, we had JFK shooting. We had Ronald Reagan shot. We had Trump shot. We then have the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Folks yelling, saying they're going to head to church. They're going to get baptized. They're starting to read their Bible. This is all good stuff. I'm not ripping it. But is this just our knee-jerk reaction, and literally by the time the next election comes up, everybody's back to the same old ways? Or do you think there's some stick-to-itness to this?
Oh, I think there's some stick-to-itness. I think it's a decade, and you've seen it. We got to see it on the ground. The young kids, and here's why I think there's some longevity to it. I think the 30-year-olds and the 18-year-olds are feeling what's happening. 30-year-olds, I can't buy a house. I feel my dream had been stolen. You told me to go to college. I did it. It didn't add value. All of those things, they're actually feeling it and they're moving. I also argue the younger 18-year-olds, they're being told and have been fed this garbage in schools that boys are not boys and girls are not girls. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that those are issues that they're trying to get those kids to believe something that they're not or that don't believe what you're seeing. But we've been seeing the movement. It's nationwide. He was certainly a big part of it. But there's been a whole group of people that are fueling it, and I think it is sustainable. And like everything else, though, President Trump gives us the opportunity. He's not going to be the end-all, be-all savior to this country. He's the one who provides the opportunity. If we don't grasp it and take it and continue to work hard, as well as every other citizen to participate, no movement will move forward. But I'm very positive and optimistic that we'll have a greater success in spite of Charlie being killed.
I've got to go to break. On the other side, I want to ask how you think this affects us here in Minnesota, who I think has even been closer hit with all this because what happened with the Hartmans and the Hortmans and all the rest. It's been a heck of a summer. We'll talk about that coming up here next with Senator Mark Koran. He's Senator Mark Koran. We love having him on the program. We're talking about what happened with Charlie Kirk and actually Minnesota in general. We've had a heck of a summer. I think besides it hitting Minnesotans differently, I know it has to hit senators and representatives differently. You're out there, you're in the game, and they got crazy, the Hartmans and the Hortmans. I wonder if this, I'm going with the stick-to-itiveness again to you, sir, and I mean that here in Minnesota. The governor's friend, Melissa Hortman, was shot, and we are all, every to the one of us, saying, hey, the rhetoric's done. We're not doing this anymore. We've got to tap it down. This guy ends up going to a meeting, and he said, hey, I know you thought Labor Day you're going to get a call the president was shot. Didn't get it yet, but someday. He hasn't taken this down at all, and it seems acceptable. You look at AOC and Elon Omar and the things they're saying about Charlie Kirk. Does this have any legs to it politically, even here in Minnesota where we felt it?
Well, you're when they keep telling you, hey, I take it differently from the perspective, hey, tone down your rhetoric. From my perspective, what they're telling us is you should just be quiet and submit. We're not,
No.
and it's clear, right? Governor Walz,
Yeah.
the violent, vile garbage, and it's been consistent nationally, calling us Nazis, racists, whatever the isms or the ists
Yeah.
are. They believe we're bad people with terrible ideas. We don't believe they're bad people. We just think their ideas stink, and they have no plans to turn down the rhetoric. And even those that do say, "Hey, we should get along," at the same time, it's not what you say; it's the actions and what you do. And in this case, right, when you erase 50% of the population and tell them your voice doesn't matter and we're not even willing to listen, and we're going to say and rig the system for democracy, right?
Yeah.
It's always the opposite. And that's what people are feeling it. It's like and you know me, I've talked about forever. Proxy voting
Yeah.
removes the voice of 49.99% of the people in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And you've seen all of the wild radical legislation that they've passed, which they know most of their voters, most of their own voters don't agree with it.
Yeah.
But they did it because they don't have to be held accountable and they'll hide from their own people. Their rhetoric's not going to stop. The violence has been, I can't say exclude, right? There's a few on that claim to be
What was it?
right wing. I hate right wing term, or left wing term. Um, but the majority of the violence and the unfettered, unreported violence in the streets and the protests, you're free to
Yeah.
protest. Conservative people and values have been on the attack and they've not been prosecuted or even recorded based on the
Yep.
volume of attacks that occur.
Let me throw one more thing at you. You talk about being held accountable real quickly because we only have a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Representative Finstead, congressman down here in the first, came out and he's suggesting an MSU professor should resign for the comments he made about Charlie Kirk's death. One of the things that hit me the worst in all this was the number of people who decided to go to social media and
Mhm.
dance on his grave. I, however, am a big First Amendment guy. You'd have to invite those people to your party, yada,
Yeah.
yada. I think if you're paid by my dollars, I should have the right to say maybe you shouldn't work for me. So maybe the MSU president, where do you fall on who? I don't think everybody who says something stupid on the internet should be losing their job. Where do you
No,
stand on this? The
depends.
congressman stuck his neck out, said, have him resign.
Uh, well, depends on the positions they have. Are they people of
Yeah,
influence? Are they sane, sound mind? Right? What are the values? Are you imposing a political value in your role and in the education system?
mm,
And you do have the right to First Amendment on your own time. It
yeah,
changes, depends on the roles you choose to play in society. I don't have a personal voice and an elected voice. I have a single voice once elected. Employers have the same thing. If you bring disrepute to an employer, and certainly a public education or our higher education system, we should have high standards. But it's gross what they currently allow. We've got racist teachers and professors at the University of Minnesota. They have racist propaganda
mm,
they were utilizing University of Minnesota websites. They were putting their personal
yeah,
opinions on there. You don't get that venue, and you don't. Free speech doesn't apply in the employer's environment. Look at the Vikings and everybody
yeah,
that garbage started, and it's like I've got free speech. You do not on the
yeah,
football stadium, not while you're punching the clock, and they have a morals clause in their contracts.
yeah,
What you say will be held against you. That doesn't mean free speech is under assault. There are
yeah.
consequences to all speech.
Well, and then the left saying that this was the federal government getting rid
Oh,
of free
oh,
speech when what Kimmel got let go.
the
His
people,
boss said you're off for a week. They put him back on. That's free speech. Maybe he'll learn a lesson. Maybe he won't. He'll lose another week. I don't know,
the,
but that had
the,
nothing to do with the federal
the
government
people
free
who
speech.
canceled everybody based on an opposing view,
Yeah, that.
vile or otherwise, was a true assault and assisted by our government. That's even worse.
All
And
right.
so they should be held to the same standards. And there are consequences for all speech.
Senator Mark Koran, appreciate you taking the time to be with us. It's always a pleasure. I thank you for doing this, sir.
Thanks, Al.
All right. He's Senator Mark Koran, good friend of the program. We'll be back more right after this.